dear viewers, this is Dr. Aisha Nazuk here. Today we are going to start chapter number 8 of Gujarati and Porter book. Those of you who have been watching this playlist, that is Introduction to Econometrics, they are well aware of the fact that in each video we try to cover a different chapter of Gujarati and Porter book of Econometrics. This book is easily downloadable from the Genesis library, and my regular viewers are well aware of the fact that I've also covered a video on how to download books from the Genesis library. I'll also post the URL of Genesis library in the comment section of this video so that you can easily download the book, which is, as I said, the author name are Gujarati and Porter book. I can show the cover page right here. So this is the book I'm talking about, Basic Econometrics book, 5th edition by Gujarati and Porter. So we are discussing chapter number 8 of this book today. So chapter number 8 is about multiple regression analysis and the problem of statistical inference. So by now I hope that you are well aware of the fact that by the word multiple regression, I mean that we have more than one independent variables in the regression equation. And when I use the word statistical inference or simply inference, that means that now we are going to generalize our results from sample to the population. That is, based on a sample results, how to generalize about the population or how to give policy recommendations. So this is the gist of today's lecture, or the contents of today's lecture. We'll discuss about the hypothesis testing of individual betas in multiple regression. We will also discuss about the joint significance or the overall significance of the independent variables. Point number 1 is about testing the significance of individual variables, whereas point number 2 is testing the significance of overall model or significance of collective significance of the independent variables to explain the dependent variable. Then we will discuss testing restrictions in multiple regression. We will then discuss the idea and testing of structural break through Chow test. And last but not the least, we are going to discuss how to choose between linear and log linear model through MWD tests. So before I start the concept of hypothesis testing, let me set some foundation concepts. The key terminologies that we use in hypothesis testing is H0 and H1. That is, the null hypothesis is called H0, whereas the alternate hypothesis is called H1. And you can see that we can have different type of pairs of H0 and H1. So keep in mind that hypothesis is always in the form of a pair. We have H0, and the exact opposite of H0 is H1. So if H0 is equality, then H1 is not equal to. If H0 is less than or equal to, then H1 is greater than, and so on. We have the type C pair of hypothesis as well. You can notice that the equations or the inequalities which involve the equal to sign, they are included in null hypothesis. So this is a standard statistical norm that whenever we have two type of equations, for example in set A we have two type of equation, equal to and not equal to. So equality will also be considered in H0. Similarly in set B we have two type of equations, less than or equal to and greater than. So equality type or the inequality which involves equality sign, this is always considered in null hypothesis or H0. The second important concept in this regard is the two-tailed test and the one-tailed test. If you look at the set A, the H1 sign means beta 2 is not equal to 0. Now if a number beta 2 or a parameter beta 2 is not equal to 0, it means it may be less than or equal less than 0, or it may be greater than 0. That is, if h1 is true, beta 2 may be positive or it may be negative. So that is why the set A is called two-tail hypothesis, right? Now set B and set C, they are called one-tailed hypothesis, because if you look at set B, it clearly indicates that if H1 is true, then beta 2 is positive. So this is one-tailed. Similarly, set C, again H1 clearly indicates that beta 2 is negative if H1 is true. So both set B and set C are called one-tailed hypothesis. Further in this regard, we can also say that set B is a right tail and set C is a left tail, right? Because if if there is greater than sign in the alternate hypothesis, we can call it right tail. If there is a less than sign in the alternate hypothesis, we can declare it as left tail. And the collective name for right tail and left tail is one-tail test. So both B and C type are one-tailed, right? And the reason we are discussing this, that you are going to come across these terminologies quite often in the courses of not only econometrics but courses like probability theory or applied econometrics or even research methodology and some other courses. So this terminology is going to help you a lot apart from this lecture or apart from this course. So whenever we declare different type of hypotheses, you see that now we have in each set of hypotheses we have two types of situations. For example, H0 is one situation, H1 is the exact opposite situation. So we need to we need to derive a decision rule that can help us whether we should reject H0 or not. So what are the decision rules? Let me introduce the decision rules and then I'll tell you how to calculate the inputs or the important ingredients in this decision rule. For example, if you have a brief look at these decision rules, we have two important things here, the T calculated and T tabulated. So I'll shortly in the coming slide tell you how to find the value of T calculated and T tabulated. But for now, what you have to focus is that if your hypothesis is of type set A, that is equal to versus not equal to, then the decision rule is that we reject H0 if T calculated is less than or equal to minus of T tabulated, or if T calculated is greater than or equal to T tabulated. So we have two conditions, and even if one of these is true or if both are true, we reject H0, right? If one of these is true or both are true, then we are going to reject H0. For case B, notice that in case B, just look at the sign of H1. So in H1 we have greater than sign. So you can easily recall that the decision rule will also be of greater than type. So the decision rule for case B or set B is that we reject H0 if T calculated is greater than or equal to T tabulated. And for case C, in the H1 we have less than sign. So we are going to reject H0 if T calculated is less than or equal to minus of T tabulated. So in the coming few slides, I am going to tell you how to find the value of T calculated and how to find the value of T tabulated. So we are going to discuss now how to calculate the value of T calculated. So as I said that there are two important ingredients or inputs of this decision rule. Let's focus first on T calculated. We know that whenever we run a regression, we are given a sample data. For example, we may be having 20 values of the dependent variable, 20 values of first independent variable and 20 values of the second independent variable. So by now you know that we have a convention of calling the first independent variable as x2 and the second independent variable as x3, right? So we do not use x1 as a notation for independent variables for the reasons that we have already discussed. Anyhow, that is something just to be mathematically accurate, so nothing conceptual about it. That's a standard convention that the first independent variable is called x2 and the second independent variable is called x3. So if we have to do hypothesis testing of beta 1, that is the intercept, so t calculated is beta 1 hat minus beta 1 over standard error of beta 1 hat. Now what is this beta 1 hat? This is the value of intercept that we calculate from the sample, right? Beta 1 hat is the value of the intercept that we have calculated from the sample. And what is this beta 1? This is the value for which we are testing in the H0. For example, if we are testing that beta 1 is equal to 0, then this beta 1 will be 0. Let me once again refer to the hypothesis. For example, if you look at set A, if this was an hypothesis about beta 1 and it was like this, that beta 1 equal to 0 versus beta 1 not equal to 0. So the value of beta 1 in H0, in other words, whichever value against which we are testing, here we are testing that the beta or the intercept is 0. So this value, the second term here will be 0. So let me repeat, beta 1 hat is the value of intercept in the sample. Beta 1 is the value of against which we are testing, and that value is mentioned in the null hypothesis, that is H0. Then in the denominator we have standard error of beta 1 hat. What is standard error? It is square root of variance. You can see that the formula of variance is quite complicated. So if if we are taking help of Excel, then of course standard errors are automatically reported. Whenever you run regression in Microsoft Excel or any other software, the values of standard errors are already reported. But for example, if you are given this type of a question that you have to solve manually, then of course you need to use these formulas to calculate standard errors. That is, if I need standard error of beta 1 hat, I am going to find variance of beta 1 hat and then take its square root. But if you have a look at this formula, the problem is these are quite lengthy formula and not quite easy to memorize. So for the students of NAST, I have decided that if these type of, like particularly these formulas of variance of beta 1 hat and variance of beta 2 hat, then variance of beta 3 hat. So we have basically three formulas because we are referring or restricting ourselves to the case where we have only two independent variables. So beta 1 hat is intercept, beta 2 hat is the coefficient of the first independent variable, beta 3 hat is the coefficient of the second independent variable. So this equation 7.4.9 and 7.4.11 and then the equation 7.4.14, all these three equations, I have decided that if such a question is given in exam where you have to calculate variances of different betas, then these formulas or these equations will be given in the exam, right? As I said that these formulas are quite lengthy, so I'm not going to burden my dear students to memorize these three formulas. They will be given. Now if you look at the formula of variance of beta 1 hat, you see that there are different things that you need to calculate. I hope that you can recall that whenever we have a variable written in lowercase or small letter, that means that it is in deviation form. That is, the mean of that variable is subtracted from it. and if we have a variable written in capital form, that means that is the actual variable. For example, this x2 bar square means mean of x2 and then take its square, right? Similarly, x3 square is that you are going to subtract the mean of x3 from each value of x3 and then take its square, and after all those squares you are going to add these. So shortly I am going to do this activity where I am going to calculate these deviations, the formulas of beta, so that will be clear that what is meant by these inputs. This terminology sigma square, you know that this is the residual variance, and the formula for residual variance is equal to sum of squared deviations or the sum of squared residuals divided by n minus 3. And why we are dividing by n minus 3? Because we have 3 betas in the model, beta 1, beta 2 and beta 3. So we are dividing by n minus 3. So by using this formula I can easily calculate this sigma square. So you can notice that the sigma square is used in all the formulas of variances, that is variance of beta 1 hat, variance of beta 2 hat and variance of beta 3 hat. In all these formulas we have this term sigma square. So you can see that this term sigma square, how we find its value? Through this formula. So an estimate of sigma square is sigma hat square, and this is from this equation you can easily calculate it. So let's focus on an example so we will clearly understand how to do hypothesis testing. Let's say we have this regression equation in which child mortality is regressed upon per capita GNP and female literacy rate, and this is the regression output. Let's say we have the values of standard errors with us, and we want to calculate we want to decide whether beta 2 is 0 versus beta 2 is non-zero. One important thing is, what is beta 2? Coefficient of per capita GNP. One student might wonder that we already have the value here, it is minus 0.0056. Then why are we testing whether it's 0 or not? The point is, this regression equation or the regression result is coming out of a random sample. So this coefficient of per capita GNP is beta 2 hat, or an estimate of the impact of per capita GNP on child mortality. Whereas the hypothesis is about the actual or true beta 2 coefficient had we used the complete population, right? So when we test that beta 2 is equal to 0, that means that in the population the impact of per capita GNP on child mortality is 0 versus that impact is non-zero. So to cut short, the regression equation is about sample, whereas the hypothesis is about population parameters. Okay, so how we can test this hypothesis? As I said that we have to find the value of t calculated and t tabulated. So t calculated can be easily found by using these three equations, which we will shortly do. And then how to find t tabulated? As the word t tabulated suggests that we have to use some t table. So depending upon whether your hypothesis is two-tailed or one-tailed, we are going on to focus on a particular row. So here our hypothesis is equal to versus not equal to, so it's a two-tailed hypothesis. So the smaller probability shown at the head of each column is one tail, like this. The first values 0.25, 0.1, 0.05, so on. This is one-tailed probability. Whereas the second row is the two-tailed probability. So for the current example, we have to focus on this second row, right? So once again, the hypothesis is beta 2 equal to 0 versus beta 2 not equal to 0. So notice, if we focus first on t calculated is equal to value of beta 2 in the sample minus the value against which we are testing. So we are testing against 0, that's why you see we haven't subtracted anything here. So this is simply value of beta 2 hat in the sample minus 0. Of course, if we subtract 0 from something, that thing will remain as it is. That's why I have skipped that part here. I haven't written minus 0. So the value of beta 2 in the sample, you can see that the value is minus 0.0056. So we have divided minus 0.0056 by the standard error of beta 2. Going back here, standard error of beta 2 is given in the bracket here, 0.0019, so or almost 0.002. So we have divided by the standard error, and this is the value of t calculated. Now I need the value of t tabulated. Whenever you have to find the value of t tabulated, keep in mind what is your sample size. So if you refer back to the original equation, it's written that the sample of 64 countries was used. So that means that the sample size is 64. Degrees of freedom is equal to sample size minus number of betas in the equation. So in this equation you can see we have 3 betas, that is the intercept, beta 2 and beta 3. So degrees of freedom is n minus 3. So 64 minus 3 is 61. Now we have to set the value of alpha or type 1 error. Either this will be, from exam point of view, either this value of alpha will be given, or if the alpha is not given, as a standard convention we take it equal to 0.05. So alpha is equal to 0.05. Now what we have to do, we will go in the t table and we will choose alpha equal to 0.05 in the two-tailed version, and we will choose degrees of freedom equal to 61. So if I refer to this table, you can see that in the second row I am going to highlight the probability 0.05 because alpha is equal to 0.05. Then in the degrees of freedom column I am going to go to the row which has a heading of 61. But you see, I don't have any row which is labeled 61. After 60 I have the value 120. So I am going to use approximate value. So I am going to use this 60 row because 61 row is not available. So I have to use 60, right? So against 60, the value of 0.05, that is alpha, the t value is, or t tabulated is 2. So t tabulated is 2, right? Now the decision rule is, as we said, that reject H naught if t calculated is less than or equal to minus t tabulated, or t calculated is greater than t tabulated. So that means either this minus 2.8187, which is the t calculated value, if it is less than minus 2, which is the t tabulated value, or if this value is greater than t tabulated, we are going to reject the null hypothesis. So you can see that one of these conditions is true, therefore we reject the null hypothesis, and by rejecting the null hypothesis it means that beta 2 is not equal to 0. So what does that mean? If I go back to the original equation, I am saying that the impact of per capita GNP on child mortality in the population is not equal to 0. So this is exactly what is written here, that when we say that we reject the null hypothesis, then we are actually saying that even if I ignore the impact of female literacy rate, right? Because we are talking about the impact of per capita GNP, so we are for a moment ignoring the impact of female literacy rate. So ignoring the impact of female literacy rate on child mortality, per capita GNP has a significant impact on child mortality, and since the sign is negative, so I am saying significant and negative impact on child mortality. That is, if a country's per capita GNP increases, then child mortality is expected to decrease. So with the help of this hypothesis testing, we have given a policy recommendations for for any country. I mean, although we have used the data of sample of 64 countries, but now we are giving policy recommendations for all the countries which are similar to the countries that we have analyzed in the sample, right? Next, we have the concept of testing the overall significance of the sample regression. For now, we were focusing on testing whether one particular independent variable has an important impact on the dependent variable. The overall significance means that we are testing whether collectively the independent variables are explaining the dependent variable or not. So if the null hypothesis is all betas, that is beta 2 and beta 3, because beta 1 is simply intercept, so we don't test about it when I talk about overall significance. So if beta 2 and beta 3 become 0, that means there is no impact of first independent variable or the second independent variable. So alternate hypothesis will be at least one of the betas is non-zero. So for example, if we have k independent variables, then the null hypothesis is that all betas are 0, whereas the alternate is at least one of the beta is non-zero, right? So how we can test this hypothesis? We have to calculate a statistic called F statistic, which is defined as ESS over RSS. Now what is this ESS? This is explained sum of square. RSS is the residual sum of square. So we divide the explained sum of square by k minus 1 and residual sum of square by n minus k. So before I discuss the decision rule, let's recall how to calculate explained sum of square and residual sum of square. So explained sum of square or ESS is also called the regression sum of square. That means that the variation in the dependent variable which is explained by all the independent variable collectively. So how we calculate it mathematically? If we have the regression, we calculate the fitted value or the predicted value of y, and then we take the difference of predicted value with the mean value of y, square it and sum it. So this is called regression sum of square. Then the residual sum of square is simply the difference between actual y and predicted y, and take their square and add these. So these formulas are used in the procedure that we are currently discussing, which is ANOVA, also called ANOVA or the analysis of variation, because you can see that this procedure is based on variation or variance type formulas. That is, we have sum of squared deviation. So I will shortly discuss in a regression activity or ANOVA activity in Microsoft Excel, where we are going to calculate these sum of squares, where we will also discuss that if we don't rely on Excel, we can manually easily calculate these sum of squares. So if we have the values of ESS and RSS, then we can find the value of F statistics. This value will be called F calculated. So after calculating F calculated, how to decide whether H naught is true or not? The rule is that if F calculated is greater than F tabulated, this value which we are writing like this, F alpha k minus 1 n minus k, this is simply, actually when we were using the t-test, we had only 1 degrees of freedom, whereas in F test we have 2 degrees of freedom. So the first degree of freedom is k minus 1, the second degree of freedom is n minus k, and alpha is simply, as we said, that whenever we do hypothesis testing, we set a level of significance or type 1 error. If that value is not given, then alpha is taken as 0.05. So we will shortly do an activity where we'll calculate F calculated, we'll find F tabulated, and we'll decide how to reject H naught or not. So this is a sample layout of the F table. where we have, as we said, that there are 2 degrees of freedom for the F table. So degrees of freedom for the numerator or n1, that is, you see, in the numerator the degrees of freedom is k minus 1, in the denominator n minus k. So k is the number of betas in the model. So suppose if k is 3, then the degrees of freedom for the numerator will be 3 minus 1, that is 2. Similarly, if the sample size is 50 and k is 3, then the degrees of freedom for the denominator will be 50 minus 3, that is 47. So we are given different values of degrees of freedom for numerator and denominator, and depending upon the combination we can find the value of F tabulated from this table. So we will now discuss an activity in Excel where we are going to do this F test and testing the overall significance of a regression model. So now we are going to discuss this Excel based activity where we are going to use data on, in fact hypothetical data on the dependent variable, that is y, and the independent variable. The first independent variable is x2 and the second independent variable is x3. So let's say we are given with this data that I have just selected here, and we have to calculate explained sum of square and residual sum of square, and before that of course we need the values of the betas involved, that is intercept, beta 2 hat and beta 3 hat. So based on the formulas that we learned, let me show the formulas here. In my last video where I was discussing about chapter 7, I mentioned that the formula of beta 2 hat is given by this equation and formula of beta 3 hat is given by this equation. So you can notice that what we need is yi x2i, then x3i square, yi x3i, x2i into x3i, and similarly other ingredients of these formulas are required. So based on the requirements of these formula, what we have to do, first of all, remember that this lowercase letter means that we have to convert the variables in deviation form. So that means first of all I am going to calculate y bar, x2 bar and x3 bar. So what I have done here is I have calculated y bar, which is simply sum of these values divided by number of values, right? I have divided the values from the second cell till the 16th cell, and I added all these values and divide by the number of observation, which is 15 here. So this is y bar, or you can manually easily verify that you add all these values and divide by 15 and you will get that y bar is 87.73. Similarly, x2 bar is sum of these values divided by number of the observations. By the way, here in the top row I have stored the sum value, so while you are doing manual calculations you can easily match that the sum of y is 1316, sum of x2 is 2668.5 and so on. So calculate y bar, x2 bar and x3 bar, that is mean of all the variables. Then from each value of y I am going to subtract mean of y. So the first column is, you can see, 25 minus 87.7333, which is mean of y. Similarly, second value in this column is 32 minus mean of y, and so on. So once we have these deviations, then we will calculate deviations of x2, which is each value of x2 minus the mean, which is 177.9. So you can see that I have subtracted 177.9 from each of the values of x2, right? So similarly I am going to find deviation of x3, which is each value of x3 minus mean of x3, which is 29.3667. So once I have these deviation, I am going to find the cross product and the squares which are required in the beta formula. If you look at beta 2 hat, I need yi x2i x3i square. I also need x2i square, then x2i x3i. So I am going to find, for example, yi x2i. You can simply see that I have multiplied the deviations yi with the deviation x2i. Similarly, x3i square is simply the square of x3i column. Then yi x3i is the cross product of the column yi and x3i. So similarly, you can easily see that I have calculated different columns that are required in the formula. So even if you are doing this calculations manually, you can simply calculate these deviation with the method I have just explained, and then you can multiply the columns which are required or square the column whichever square is required. So now I have these values, different values. So what is the value of beta 2 hat? You know that beta 2 hat is equal to sum of yi x2i, which is stored in cell H17. So H17 into I17. So what is I17? x3i square as required in the formula. So even if you are doing this manually, you are going to multiply these two sums minus yi x3i, which is J17, and then x2i into x3i, which is L17. Similarly, the denominator is x2i square, which you can see that x2i square is here in K17 column. So I have multiplied K17 by x3i square. x3i square is in which column do we have? It's here, yeah, I column. So I have multiplied by I17. So you can easily see that by clicking on different column, what I am doing is using this formula given in equation 7.4.7 and calculating the value of beta 2 hat. So if you are doing it manually, you are going to calculate all these columns manually, find the sum of these columns, and then use the relevant sum required in the beta 2 hat column, and then you can easily find beta 2 hat. Similarly, you have the formula for beta 3 hat, and you can calculate the value of beta 3 hat. So I am not going to discuss that here because it's similar to the calculation of beta 2 hat. One important announcement or information is these two formulas you need to memorize. I mean, the only discount that I have given in terms of not memorizing the formula was which I just discussed in previous few slides, was the standard errors of betas. So but you should memorize the formula of beta 2 hat and beta 3 hat, and you know that the intercept is simply equal to y bar, which is stored here in 18 column of 18 cell of column A. So y bar minus beta 2 hat times x2 bar minus beta 3 hat times x3 bar. So you can simply see that the value of intercept is simply equal to mean of y minus beta 2 hat times mean of x2 minus beta 3 hat times mean of x3. So that's how we got the value of intercept. Now when we have the value of both betas, in fact of the three betas we have the value, so I can easily find y hat, which is predicted value of y. So what is predicted value of y? Y hat is equal to intercept plus slope times x2. In fact, this is the coefficient of x2, which is beta 2 hat times x2 plus beta 3 hat times x3, right? So what I am doing here is, if it's not clear, let me type here separately that how I am calculating y hat. Y hat is equal to intercept plus the slope of the first variable x2 multiplied by value of x2 plus the slope of x3 multiplied by value of x3. So this is the formula that I am using for calculating y hat. So intercept, that is beta naught, plus slope of x2 which is beta 2 hat, times value of x2 plus slope of x3 which is beta 3 hat, multiply by value of x3. So this is exactly I have done here. You can see that I am multiplying x2 by beta 2 hat. So this is B2 cell, which is, you can see in B2 we have the first value of x2 multiplied by beta 2 hat plus beta 3 hat multiplied by value of x3. So that's how we get y hat. Now I can calculate the second value of y hat by using the second pair x2 x3. Similarly I can calculate the third value of y hat and so on. So once I have y hat, I can simply, you can see that this row is the total row, so I have written here the total of y hat values. So next we need residual, that is ui hat, and you know that residual is always equal to actual value of y minus predicted value of y. So y minus y hat is residual. So I can find the different residuals here one by one. Next I have to find, if I'm testing, you remember that I'm discussing the procedure of ANOVA or analysis of variation, which is testing the significance of overall regression model. So I need explained sum of square and residual sum of square, and if I refer back you to the slides, you can see that the regression sum of square is fitted value of y minus y bar, and the residual sum of square is simply the sum of squared residuals. So that's easy. Residual sum of square is simply square the residual, add them. Regression, for this you have to do one additional calculation. Take the difference between the predicted value of y and the mean of y. So this is exactly that was shown here in the Excel column. So y hat minus y bar square, that means I am subtracting the predicted value of y hat with y bar and then squaring it, right? If you just double click here, I have used the power function here. Even if you don't use the power function, you can simply find the difference between y hat and mean of y, which was 87.733 that we calculated here. So mean of y is 87.733. So this is each value of y hat minus 87.733, and then we are taking its power of 2 because we have to take the square, right? So if you are doing it manually, take the difference between y hat and y bar and then square it to store in this column. So I am copying here till the end. So similarly, the second value in this column is the second value of y hat minus y bar and then squaring it, and so on. So the sum of this column is the explained sum of square, which in this case has come out to be 35833.345. Now I need residual sum of square, which is simply the square of residual. So we have already calculated ui hat or the residual column. I am simply going to take the square of this column and add all these values to get residual sum of square. So now if I have the explained sum of square and residual sum of square, I am going to divide the explained sum of square by k minus 1 and the regression sum of the residual sum of square by n minus k. So let me refer back to the formula that we were discussing here in f. So the f statistic is explained sum of square by k minus 1 divided by the regression sum of square divided by n minus k. So this is exactly we have done here, that we have divided the explained sum of square by k minus 1, and k is the number of betas in the model, which is 3 here, beta 2, beta 3 and the intercept beta naught. So 3 minus 1 is 2. So we have divided by k minus 1, and then the residual sum of square is divided by n minus k. N is the total sample size. You can easily check that the actual sample size is 15. That is from, if I just count the values, these are 15 values for each variable. So n is 15, and 15 minus number of parameters, that is k. So 15 minus 3 is 12. So we have divided these two. Now to find the value of f, I am going to divide these two values. So you can simply see that we divide ESS over k minus 1 by RSS over n minus k. So I divide these two values to get the value of f calculated. Now what my decision rule will be, that I will reject H naught if f calculated is greater than f alpha at the degrees of freedom k minus 1 and n minus k. So if alpha is not given, we are going to set alpha equal to 0.05. Otherwise, if alpha is given, I am going to use that value. So k minus 1, as we just noted, k minus 1 is 2, n minus k here is 12. So f alpha 2, 12. We need this value from the table. So what I have to do, I have copied the screenshot of f table here for your convenience. So the degrees of freedom for the numerator is 2 and for the denominator is 12. So I am going to choose 2 here, and in the denominator side I am going to choose 12. So the value of f table gives me 3.89, and I have encircled the value 0.05 because alpha is 0.05. So that means the value of f at alpha 0.05 and degrees of freedom 2 and 12 is equal to 3.89. So that means we are going to reject H naught if f calculated is greater than 3.89. So we have just seen that the f calculated value is 1723, which is very much greater than 3.89. So that means we reject H naught. And what does that mean? When we reject H naught, it means that we are rejecting the hypothesis that all betas are equal to 0. That is, we are rejecting that beta 2 equal to beta 3 equal to 0. So that means overall x2 and x3 have efficiently explained the y variable. In other words, this regression has efficiently or statistically significantly explained the values of y variable. In other words, this regression is suitable for predicting the values of dependent variable. So this was about testing the overall significance of a multiple regression through f-tests. So we have discussed the ANOVA based activity. Next, on a side note, let me discuss when we run regression from exam point of view, it is very easy because we are given the dependent variable and we are given the independent variables. But in practice, when we have to develop the regression equation, for example, if I give you an assignment and I say you go and find the determinants of child labor, right? What am I saying is, for example, if I say you go and find the determinants of child labor, so that means I am saying that develop a regression equation of child labor and pick the independent variable. In other words, child labor is dependent upon which variables. Go and find those variables. So how are you going to find those variables? Of course, you are going to do a literature review. You are going to study the relevant research papers, or you are going to discuss with the experts of labor force that what are the factors that influence the inclusion of children in labor force, or what are the factors that encourage or discourage child labor. So you are going to include data on those variables. So for example, if you have enlisted 5 or 6 important variables that you think that they can explain child labor, then how to decide whether a particular variable is important or not? The criteria is that whenever you add a new variable in your equation and you have to decide whether that addition is suitable or not, whether that variable should be included in the model or not, it's simple that you find the value of adjusted R square. This R with a bar simply means adjusted R square that I covered in the last lecture. So you find the value of adjusted R square and you will see whether adding that variable has caused an increase in the value of adjusted R square. That is, you're going to compare the value of adjusted R square without that variable and with that variable. If after adding that variable the value of adjusted R square increases, that means that it's a statistical hint that this variable is an important determinant of the dependent variable. So this is how, when you are developing new models outside an exam environment, then you can decide on the basis of adjusted R square. So let's say if I ask you what are the criteria on the basis of which you can add a new variable in the regression equation, your answer should be that there are mainly two criteria. The first one is, with the help of expert opinion, literature review, or the underlying theory, you are going to select the important variables. The second factor or the second method of adding variable is testing their statistical significance with the help of adjusted R square. If addition of a new variable increases the value of adjusted R square, then we should add that variable. So this was about deciding when to add a new independent variable in the model. Next, we are going to discuss the concept of testing linear equality restrictions on the model and why they are important in economics. Let's focus on an example from economics. Suppose we have the Cobb-Douglas production function given here, where yi is the output, x2 is the labor input, x3 is the capital input. So you can see that in its actual form this equation is not linear. So in order to linearize it, we can take the log on both sides. So log of yi or natural log of yi equal to beta naught plus beta 2 times ln of x2i plus beta 3 times ln of x3i plus, you know that e function and ln function are inverse of each other, so we are just left with ui. One important consideration here is I have used the notation beta naught equal to ln of beta 1. So instead of writing ln of beta 1, I have written beta naught, or you can simply write ln of beta 1 as well. That doesn't make a lot of difference. So I have taken the natural log on both sides to linearize this Cobb-Douglas production function. Now if we have to test whether the constant return to scale hypothesis is true here or not, then I am going to check whether the restriction beta 2 plus beta 3 is equal to 1 or not, right? So the marginal impact of labor plus the marginal impact of capital, or because these are in log form, so elasticity of labor and elasticity of capital. If those elasticities they add up to 1, then I am going to say that we are working under the hypothesis of constant returns to scale. So if we were to test the hypothesis of constant returns to scale, actually we have to do the hypothesis testing whether beta 2 plus beta 3 is equal to 1 or not. So if I have to test this linear equality restriction, then how I can do that? Let's discuss that formula. We are going to use the f-test for linear restrictions. We have just discussed that the restriction is beta 2 plus beta 3 is equal to 1. So that means that I can write that beta 2 equal to 1 minus beta 3 or beta 3 is equal to 1 minus beta 2. So I am going to use this, I can either impose beta 2 equal to 1 minus beta 3 or beta 3 equal to 1 minus beta 2. So let's say if I impose the first type, because these two are equivalent. So in the original log form equation, I am going to substitute the value of beta 2 equal to 1 minus beta 3, and then I am going to rearrange. You can see that I have rearranged this regression equation by bringing all the simple the terms here, where we have the log simply on the variable. So log of y minus log of x2y is equal to the intercept as it is plus beta, taken beta 3 common, and solve these two terms to derive the equation 8.6.7. and you know by the property of log that the difference of two log is equal to log of their quotients, that is log of y minus log of x2i is equal to log of yi divided by x2i. Similarly, log of x3i minus log of x2i is equal to log of x3i divided by x2i. So now the regression equation is in the form of quotients or ratios. So this is output to labor ratio, whereas x3 over x2 is capital to labor ratios. So what I am going to do is I am going to run the regression in this form, which is you can say that this form is also called the restricted least square, because here we have imposed a restriction that beta 2 equal to 1 minus beta 3. So this is the restricted least square or the restricted regression equation, whereas the original equation 8.6.2, which is without any restriction, this is the unrestricted regression. So what we are going to do, we will run the original form equation that I just said, equation 8.6.2, and the model with restriction imposed that I have just discussed, and I have called it equation 8.6.8. Let me refer back. So we will run this regression equation, original 8.6.2, and then we will run the regression equation 8.6.8, where we impose the restriction. So we will run both of these regressions separately, and we will calculate the residual sum of square. So I have shortly told you how to calculate the residual sum of square. You can calculate in Microsoft Excel, or you can do that manually. So once you are using the original form equation, what you have to do is just focus in the original form equation. I am going to use the log of each variables and then calculate the values of slopes, that is beta 2 and beta 3 and intercept. Whereas in the restricted form, I have to convert the data into ratio form and then run the regression to get the values of respective betas in this equation. So once I have the two regression equation, I can calculate the residual sum of square separately. So once I have the residual sum of square, I will call the RSS or the residual sum of square of equation 8.62 as sum of residual from the unrestricted model and then from the equation which I just did of the restricted regression equation 8.6.7 or 8.6.8, both are equivalent. So the residual of sum of square from this one will be the restricted one. So you can see that this is called the sum of squared residual from the restricted model and then the sum of squared residual from the unrestricted model. M is the number of restrictions. In the present example, it is just one because we have one restriction. K is the number of parameters in the unrestricted regression or the original model. N is the number of observations. So based on this formula, equation 8.6.9, you have to calculate the value of F statistic, right? That is, take the difference of residual sum of square from the restricted model and unrestricted model, divide by the number of restriction, then whole divided by the residual of sum of square from the unrestricted model by n minus k, where n and k are defined above. So once you have this f value, how to know whether to accept h naught or reject h naught? First of all, what is h naught? Or the null hypothesis is that the restriction is valid. Alternate hypothesis is that the restriction is not valid. I am sorry for this typo. Grammatically this should have been written the restriction is not valid. So we reject the null hypothesis if f calculated is greater than f alpha at the degrees of freedom of this test is always equal to m comma n minus k, where m is the number of restriction, which in this case is 1, n is the sample size and k is the number of betas in the model. So based on this criteria, we reject the null hypothesis, that is if calculated value of f is greater than f alpha at m comma n minus k. So these are the degrees of freedom of f statistic. And what is f calculated? That I have just mentioned using this formula 8.6.9 is f calculated. So from a numerical perspective, what you have to do, if you have to check different restrictions, for example, let's say you have data on y, x2 and x3. First of all, you will regress ln of y on ln of x2 and ln of x3. That is, first of all, make new columns. If you have data on yi, make a column ln of yi, another column ln of x2i, another column ln of x3i. Then use the the information in ln form of all variables to find the betas in this regression equation, and then find the residual sum of square, and we will call it unrestricted residual sum of square. Then after imposing this restriction, whatever the restriction, from exam point of view the restriction will be given, so impose this restriction and derive the new regression equation. So for example, this is the new regression equation in equation 8.6.8. so calculate yi over x2y, that is the dependent variable. Each value of dependent variable is divided by the value of the first independent variable x2y. So calculate this ratio, take its ln, this will be your dependent variable. Similarly, find the ratio of x3i over x2y, take its ln, and this will be your independent variable. By the way, I will be shortly discussing how to run log form regressions in Microsoft Excel, and by doing that activity you will also understand if you have to run log form regression manually, then how you can do it. So you will learn how to find. In other words, if you just have a quick look at this regression equation, this is simply the case of one dependent variable and one independent variable. So if you have the original form equation and restricted form equation, you find their residual sum of square and calculate this f calculated, compare it the value of f tabulated, which is f alpha at m comma n minus k, and if f calculated is greater than f alpha at m comma n minus k, then you reject the null hypothesis, that is you reject the condition that the restrictions are valid, and you will say that the imposed restrictions are not valid if you reject the null hypothesis. So next we discuss the idea of testing structural stability or structural break. You know that whenever we have data on different variables, sometimes there are important changes, especially in time series data. For example, if we have data on the saving pattern, how savings are related with disposable income. So we know that, for example, if we talk about USA and we have data from, let's say, 70s to 90s, we know that there are different, structural changes in the economy of USA. For example, the OPEC oil cartel, which was imposed, or the oil embargoes imposed by the OPEC oil cartel in 73 and 79, or the Gulf War in 90 to 91. So these are different structural break in the economy that can influence or that can change the relationship between saving and income, right? In simple word, in wartime, saving relationship with income will be different, or when there is a restrictions or trade restrictions in the economy, then the relationship between saving and income will be different. So in simple word, if we have data on dependent variable and some independent variable, and we suspect that there are certain changes over time that can influence the relationship between these two variables, we call it a structural break. And how we can test whether that structural break is statistically significant, right? How we can test that? We can test that through the cow test or the chow test. So let's say we have data on savings and income from the year 70 to 1995, and suppose that an expert economist tells us that in the year, you can say that in the year 1982, there was a structural break and USA economy shifted in terms of pre-recession period and post-recession period. So what I am going to do, we are going to divide our data in two halves, from 70 to 81 and then 80 to 1995. So you can see that from 70 to 81 we have 12 observation, 82 to 95 we have 14 observation, and in total from 1970 to 1995 we have 26 observations. So what we are testing is, if I use this entire data and run a regression, that will be equation 8.7.3, and that equation is saying that the structural break is not important and we can use single regression to explain the relationship between savings and income. But the regression equations 7.1 and 7.2, they are saying that we have split the data into two halves by respecting the fact that there is a break or there is a year in which the US economy has significantly shifted. So if I run these two regression, that means that I am respecting the fact that there is a structural break in this system. Now, how to statistically test whether we should run separate regressions or the overall regression? The procedure of Chow test we will discuss shortly. First of all, the null hypothesis of the Chow test is there is no structural break, whereas the alternate hypothesis is that there is a structural break in the data. So we reject the null hypothesis if f calculated is greater than f alpha and the degrees of freedom of Chow test are equal to k, n1 plus n2 minus 2k, where k is the number of betas in the model. That is the model in we do not introduce structural break. For example, in equation 8.7.3 we have how many parameters? You can see 1 and 2. So number of betas in the model is k, and 1 is the number of observations before the structural break, and n2 is the number of observation after the structural break. So in this equation, n1 is 12 and n2 is 14, where n is the sum of these two, which is 26. So what we are going to do, we are going to run the three regressions, that is pre-structural break, post-structural break, and the collective model where we do not introduce any structural break. So what does that mean? Referring back to the original data, first of all I am going to run a regression by using the data from 70 to 81, then another regression from 82 to 95, right? So these will be 8.7.1 and 8.7.2. The third regression, where I'll be using the entire data from 1970 to 1995. So these are the three types of regression. The first regression, that is before the structural break, the second one which is the after structural break, and the third one which is the overall regression model without focusing on the structural break. For each of these models, I am going to calculate the residual sum of square. So the residual sum of square from the first model is called RSS1. The residual sum of square from the second model is called RSS2, and similarly from the third model it's called RSS3. Next, I am going to apply the procedure of Chow test or the Chow test. So for the Chow test, what I have to do is I have to note the value of RSS3, RSS1 and RSS2, which I have just introduced, that RSS1 is the residual sum of square from the first model, RSS2 is the residual sum of square from the second model, and RSS3 is the residual sum of square from the third model. So once I have these values, I will calculate RSS unrestricted, which is equal to RSS1 plus RSS2, and the degrees of freedom for this will be n1 plus n2 minus 2k. Then I will calculate F statistic, which is RSS from the restricted model minus RSS from the unrestricted model divided by k, and then similarly we have its denominator RSS from the unrestricted divided by n1 plus n2 minus 2k. So RSS unrestricted is simply the sum of the residual sum of square from the first two model, and RSS restricted one is simply RSS from the third model, which is RSS3 is called the restricted residual sum of square, RSS capital R, the notation that we use. So this is how I am going to calculate this F statistic, and I will reject H0 if the calculated value of F is greater than F at k comma n1 plus n2 minus 2k. So what is k? As we said, number of betas in the model. N1 is the sample size before the structural break, N2 is the sample size after the structural break, and so on. Minus 2k is same. Now you know k is the number of beta. So we reject the null hypothesis, that is, we reject that there is no structural break if the F calculated is greater than F alpha at the degrees of freedom k comma n1 plus n2 minus 2k. So I strongly advise that instead of just relying on this video explanation, you should use this data in table 8.9 and come up with these calculations on these slides, that is these calculation RSS1, RSS2 and RSS3, and see whether you are able to match these numerical results or not. Otherwise, if you are not able, it means that you need to discuss with your instructor where there is a lack of understanding that has caused some calculation error or conceptual error. So you should try to reproduce these numerical results using the data in table 8.9 so that you will know how to apply Chow test if you have to, even from the exam point of view. So from here we come on the last topic of today's lecture, which is how to decide between a linear model and a log linear model. Suppose in a particular scenario, if you have to decide whether linear model is good or a log linear model is a good fit, then you have to use McCain, White and Davidson test, or for brevity, or we abbreviate it as MWD test. So what you have to do is you have to estimate the linear model and obtain its fitted value and call them YF. So instead of reading out all these steps, let's focus on an Excel file where I have applied the MWD test. So let's do step number 1, that is estimate the linear model and obtain the estimated value, call these YF. So referring back to this MWD test, so let's say I have this data on Y, X2 and X3. first of all, what I am going to do, I am going to run a linear regression. So for that, you know that the formulas of betas required y in deviation form. So I will calculate y bar, x2 bar and x3 bar. So then I will calculate the deviation column, that is each value of y minus y bar, similarly each value of x2 minus x bar, and so on. So once I have the deviation column, I can simply calculate the required column as mentioned in the beta formulas, and I can calculate beta 2 hat, beta 3 hat and intercept. So once I have the beta values, I can easily calculate predicted y, which is intercept plus slope times value of x2 plus the corresponding slope of beta 3 times x3. So this is simply the repetition where we just discussed the ANOVA example, and I discussed in detail how to calculate the value of beta 2 hat and beta 3 hat and the intercept. So you can find predicted value from this linear regression, call it YF. So now we have done step number 1. What is step number 2? In step number 2, you have to estimate the log linear model, that is where we use both the data in log form and then obtain the estimated value, call these LNF. So coming back here, we have the log linear model where I am going to take log of each variable. You can see that I have taken the log of each variable, ln of y, ln of x2, ln of x3. So once I have the data in log form, what I am going to do is I am going to treat this as my actual data and take deviation. So that's why I have calculated mean of all these 3 columns. So I have to subtract the mean of this column from ln y. For example, if you double click here, I have subtracted the value of y from its mean. Actually, there is a little bit error here. Let me rectify. This should be ln of y. So each value of ln of y minus the mean of this column. So I have subtracted it. Then I am going to copy this and I will paste here downward. So this is deviation for ln y. Then deviation for ln x2 is simply use each value. There was an error here, I should correct this. I have to use ln of x2 minus mean of ln of x2 column, which is 4.53. Then I am going to copy this and paste till the end. You can also do this manually. Then similarly, x3, use ln of x3 column minus mean of this column, which is 2.76. So I am going to copy this and paste it till the end. So now I have the deviation of the log model. So I just, for simplicity, I have called this as yi, x2i and x3i. So then I have to calculate by the beta formulas different cross product, that is yi x2i, x3i square, yi x3i, x2i square, x2i, x3i. So simply have a look at the beta formulas and we will know which particular column should be squared and which 2 columns should be multiplied. So once I have these columns, I can simply find the value of beta 2 hat by using the formula of beta 2 and beta 3 hat by using the formula of beta 3, and similarly the intercept. So once I have the betas and the intercept, I can find the values of y hat, or I can call the predicted values as ln f based on the notation that is given by the procedure of MWD test. So let's double click here. I have to change these values because there was an error here. So the intercept is minus 94.7949, right? This is intercept. Then beta 2 hat is plus 0.89. So let me just rectify the entire equation here. So plus beta 2 hat, which is 0.89201, times the value of the first independent variable, which in this case is ln of x2 plus beta 3, which is 3.07854 multiplied by the second independent variable, which in this case is ln of x3, because we are running the log form model. So this is the equation. Now I am going to copy it and I will paste it here. So this is the value of, okay, so this is the y hat column. Now ui hat is simply actual value of y minus predicted value of y. So the actual value of y for the log model is this D column. So I should choose D2 here. So instead of A2, as I said, there was an error here. So D2 minus y hat, right? D column, we have actual log y minus this predicted value. So this is ui hat. I am going to copy it and drag it till the end. So now I have the values of ui hat and ln f. So referring back to the original steps, now I have to calculate z1, which is equal to ln of yf minus ln of f. And what is ln of yf? You remember that the fitted value from the linear model we call them yf, and the fitted value from the linear model we call them ln f. So we are going to take the difference between the two fitted values. So this is the reason I have copied these fitted values, ln f values, in a separate sheet, and I am calling it separate step 4 regression. So just a minute, the step 4 regression is, just a minute, let me go to the quick sheet. So we have to find the ln of f in step 2, that is, so let me repeat. In step number 1, you estimate the linear model, find the fitted values, call them yf, then you estimate the log form model, and then find the fitted values, call these ln f, then calculate the difference between ln of yf and ln of f and call it z1. So for example, when we were discussing the original linear model, we calculated the predicted values, then the log linear model where we took the log of each variable, right, and then we calculated betas and the corresponding fitted value, we call it ln f. So what we have to do now is we have to take difference between this ln f and the fitted values of the original model, which is yf. So what you have to do, you have to calculate a column z1, and how you have calculated, you have simply copied the values of y hat from the linear model and the y hat from the log linear model, and then you calculate the difference between these two. So now you have this 3 columns. What you have to do is, now you have to run a separate regression that you call the step 4 regression. So I have copied the actual data on y, x2, x3 and z1. So why this? Because the fourth step says that the regress original y on original axis and the z1 obtained in step 3. So I have copied these 3 columns here in front of y, the actual independent variable and the z1 variable that we have just constructed. Now we have 3 independent variables, so the manual calculations of beta is difficult. I will rely on Microsoft Excel to calculate the betas and their respective standard error and the other important things. So how we can do, we will click on data and then data analysis and choose regression, press OK. So in the y range, what I will do is I will choose the range of dependent variable, and in the x range, what I am going to do, I am going to choose the entire matrix of x variable, which is the x2, x3 and z1, and I will choose the option that put the regression in a new worksheet ply, so that the results are stored in a new worksheet. So I will press OK, and you will see the regression results are here. What you are going to do, you are going to copy this coefficient column, right, and this p-value column. I will shortly tell you what is the benefit. So I have copied these coefficient and p-value. So x variable 1 was, I can change it x1, the second x2, and the third one was z1. So I have copied this in step 4 regression here. Copied the beta values. You can see that the beta values are simply these coefficient values. I have copied in step 4, and the p-value column I have copied here. Now what you have to do, simply look at the p-value of z1. If this p-value is not less than or equal to 0.05, then we can reject the null hypothesis. And what is our null hypothesis? The null hypothesis is that the model is linear. So if the p-value of, coming back to the Excel file, if the p-value of z1 is less than or equal to 0.05, only then we can reject. So it means that in this case it is not less than or equal to 0.05, so we cannot reject the null. And by saying that we cannot reject the null, it means we are accepting the null hypothesis, that is, we are accepting that the linear model is an appropriate fit for the given data. So this is how, with the help of MWD test, you can check whether a linear model is a suitable fit or a log linear model. So I have already discussed the MWD test. Now you can discuss different examples, and example of this chapter 8.1, and these are the important chapter exercises that I have mentioned. You should try these exercises, and the solution manual is already uploaded on the official NUST portals. General viewers can request for the solution manual, and I can email them if they drop their email in the comment section. So you should try these exercises to check whether the contents of today's lecture are clear or not. So thank you for watching this technical lecture. I understand that this was a lengthy and a technical concept driven lecture. So maybe you need to watch this video more than once to absorb the rich concepts discussed in it. For further collaboration, you can contact me on my email IDs or the Facebook ID that I have mentioned here on my screen. So kindly like the channel, like the video, subscribe to our channel. Keep watching, keep learning. Thank you.